Have you ever noticed how life seems to keep score? How we secretly believe that good deeds get rewarded and bad actions eventually catch up to us. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most misunderstood concepts in human spirituality, through the brilliant mind of philosopher Alan Watts. What if everything you think you know about karma is completely wrong? Most of us carry around this invisible rulebook in our heads. We whisper to ourselves that somewhere, somehow, the universe is keeping a cosmic ledger of our actions. Do good things happen to you. Hurt others, and eventually that pain comes back around. It sounds fair, doesn't it? Almost comforting in its simple justice. But then reality crashes into our neat little theories. We see terrible people living amazing lives, while genuinely kind souls suffer endlessly. We watch generous hearts get trampled, while selfish individuals climb ladders of success. And perhaps, most heartbreaking of all, we hear people blame themselves for their pain, convinced they must have done something terrible in a past life to deserve their current suffering. This is what Alan Watts called suffering twice. Once from life's actual blow, and again from the belief that you somehow earned it. We've transformed a living, breathing, spiritual concept into nothing more than cosmic bookkeeping. As if the universe operates like some celestial accountant tallying debits and credits. But here's where things get interesting. The Sanskrit word karma doesn't actually mean what most people think it means. In its purest form, karma simply translates to action or activity. That's it, just the basic fact of doing something. Not some mystical force tracking your moral scorecard across multiple lifetimes. So, how did we get so far off track? Well, in ancient Indian culture, karma evolved to carry much more weight. It became intertwined with ideas of causality, the belief that your current circumstances directly result from your past actions, possibly stretching across multiple lifetimes. This wasn't just one opinion among many. It was the fundamental assumption about how reality worked, as obvious to them as gravity is to us. Think about how certain we are about basic facts today. We don't debate whether the earth is round or whether germs cause disease. These ideas are so woven into our worldview that questioning them seems absurd. That's exactly how karma and rebirth functioned in ancient Indian thought. It wasn't a choice or belief system. It was simply how the world worked. Within this framework, the ultimate spiritual goal became clear. If your actions in this life determine your conditions in the next life, then the ideal would be to act in ways that generate no further karma whatsoever. Liberation, whether called moksha in Hinduism or nirvana in Buddhism, was imagined as finally stepping off this endless wheel of birth, death, and rebirth. Most spiritual teachers, both ancient and modern, have interpreted this quite literally. They presented detailed systems of practices and disciplines designed to help you actually alter the mechanics of the universe itself, allowing your soul to permanently escape the cycle of reincarnation. But what if they're missing something profound? What if the real liberation isn't about changing cosmic machinery, but about recognizing that this entire framework is just that, a framework? A way of thinking rather than an objective description of reality. Consider how our own worldviews have shifted throughout history. Medieval Europeans were absolutely certain the heavens consisted of crystal spheres and angels sang in perfect harmony above the clouds. These weren't religious beliefs they chose. They were facts about the structure of reality itself. When those worldviews eventually faded, it wasn't because someone definitively proved angels don't exist. They simply stopped fitting with how we understand the world. The same transformation can happen with ancient Indian cosmology. As our understanding of psychology, neuroscience, and the nature of consciousness evolves. The elaborate systems of karmic law and rebirth can begin to feel unnecessary, like trying to explain the internet using medieval theories about how information travels. This brings us to something fascinating that Watts observed about karma. Even within traditional teachings, you can hear it described in two completely different ways. Most commonly, karma gets explained as straightforward cause and effect, like a cart following an ox down a road. Do something here, experience a result there, all connected by invisible threads of cosmic justice stretching across time. But there's another way to understand karma that's far more immediate and profound. Instead of thinking about chains of causation across lifetimes, what if karma simply describes the inseparable relationship between who you are and how the world appears to you? Not separate events connected by mysterious forces, but different aspects of one unified process happening right now. Think about a wave and the ocean. We can talk about them as separate things, but they're really just different ways of describing the same movement of water. The wave doesn't exist independently of the ocean, and the ocean expresses itself through the wave. They arise together, inseparably. This brings us to one of the most mind-bending aspects of Watts' perspective. He suggests that our entire notion of causation, the idea that one thing must inevitably lead to another, might be more about how our minds work than about how reality actually operates. We're so used to thinking in terms of causes and effects that we rarely question this framework. Something happens, therefore something else must happen. We imagine invisible forces compelling events to unfold in particular sequences. But when you look closely at what we call causation, something strange emerges. Take a simple example. A tree falls and makes a sound. We automatically think of these as two separate events connected by causation. The falling tree causes the sound. But are they really separate? Or are we simply describing one process, the movement and compression of air molecules, in two different ways? Consider living beings and food. We say organisms must eat to survive, as if life and nutrition were separate things joined by necessity. But is that accurate? What if living is already the process of taking in the world and transforming it? What if hunger isn't a separate force driving the creature toward food, but simply the first movement of eating itself? When you really examine causation closely, the mysterious bridge between cause and effect starts to disappear. We create artificial separations in our thinking, then puzzle over how they connect. It's like dividing a river into separate sections, then wondering how water flows from one section to another. The same puzzle appears when we treat mind and body as separate substances that somehow influence each other. We create a gap in our thinking, then spend centuries trying to figure out how it gets crossed. But what if there was never a gap to begin with? Here's where Watts gets really interesting. He points out that what we call natural laws often aren't actually forces hidden in matter itself. They're more like the rules by which we choose to categorize and name things. A stone falls when you drop it. We say it must fall because of gravity, imagining some invisible force pulling it downward. But consider this. If you released something and it floated upward, would you call it a stone? Probably not. You'd call it a feather or a piece of paper. The falling behavior is partly what we mean when we use the word stone. Similarly, a sunflower turns toward the sun not because of some external command, but because that's simply what it means to be a sunflower. A plant that behaved differently would be a different kind of plant entirely. So the necessity we perceive in nature often reflects how we organize our thinking, rather than revealing hidden forces in the world itself. When we say water must freeze at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, we're partly describing a regularity we observe. and partly defining what we mean by water, freezing, and degrees Fahrenheit. This insight completely transforms how we might understand karma. Instead of imagining it as a cosmic law operating independently of our consciousness, we can recognize it as a pattern in how we experience and interpret reality. Imagine laying a grid over a flowing stream. The water doesn't know the lines are there, but you can describe its movement in terms of squares and angles. The grid helps you make sense of the flow, but it's not actually woven into the water itself. Similarly, the patterns we use to understand the world, including ideas about karma, causation, and moral consequences, are grids we place over the flow of experience. They're useful for navigation, but they're not necessarily fundamental features of reality itself. This brings us to a radically different way of understanding karma, that is, both more immediate and more liberating. Instead of thinking about it as a ledger system tracking your moral debts across lifetimes, what if karma simply describes the reciprocal relationship between who you are and how the world appears to you? Think of yourself as a musical instrument receiving the world and simultaneously expressing it. Every note you sound is shaped by everything that has formed you, and every note you send out shapes the world in return. But this isn't because the universe is keeping score and planning to repay you later. It's because what you are and how the world appears to you are two aspects of one seamless process. The music you play is the music you hear. The gesture you make toward life is the gesture that returns to you. Not as reward or punishment, but as the natural reciprocity of being itself. When you extend kindness, you're not accumulating good karma points for future redemption. You're living in kindness right now. The kindness you offer and the kindness you experience aren't separate events connected by cosmic bookkeeping. They're different faces of the same pattern of being. Likewise, when you operate from bitterness or cruelty, you're not creating negative karma that will eventually catch up with you. You're dwelling in bitterness right now. The hostility you project and the hostile world you perceive are cause and effect. They are simultaneous expressions of how you're relating to existence in this moment. This understanding completely frees you from the weight of an imagined cosmic judge. You're no longer bound by the thought that your current joys and sorrows represent payments from some unseen hand. You don't have to fear that every step you take is weaving an inescapable fate that will trap you in future lifetimes. Instead, you can recognize that freedom isn't about escaping from the world, but about understanding that you're moving with it in either harmony or discord, and that the quality of that movement is something you're participating in right now. The patterns we inherit from ancient wisdom traditions or modern scientific materialism aren't chains binding us to particular ways of experiencing reality. They're mental frameworks that can be useful tools or unnecessary limitations, depending on how consciously we relate to them. Karma, in this deeper sense, isn't a decree handed down from cosmic authority. It's the echo of your own song. The way the pattern you are meets the pattern of the world in each moment of your existence. When you understand karma this way, everything changes. You're no longer a victim of past actions or a prisoner of future consequences. You're a conscious participant in the ongoing creation of your experience, moment by moment, breath by breath. The kindness you extend is the kindness you live within. The beauty you appreciate is the beauty you embody. The wisdom you share is the wisdom you inhabit. Not because the universe will reward you later, but because this is how consciousness and reality dance together in the eternal present. This is the real nature of karma, according to Alan Watts. Not a system of cosmic justice operating across time, but the immediate reciprocity of being itself, available for recognition in every moment of awareness. And perhaps most beautifully, this recognition itself is the liberation that all the ancient practices were pointing toward, disguised as something much more complex and distant than it actually is. The music of your existence is yours to play, and you're both the instrument and the musician, the song and the listener, creating and experiencing the symphony of your life in one seamless, eternal moment.